My name is Bryan Pieschel. I am the Director of Veteran Services here at Dogs for Our Brave. I spent 5 years active duty. I was medically retired in 2009 as an E5, so that gave me the rank as sergeant. I knew I wanted to be a medic. That was the only job I wanted. Every night on the news at that point, you were seeing pictures of servicemen lost, and not in an egotistical way, but like just serving as a medic. It's like, can I help keep one of those faces off TV? A lot of trust had to be built, especially from my end, being the new medic. I needed them to know that in the worst situations, I'd be able to handle my job and take care of them. And it really started hitting me as I was getting ready for deployment, what that level of responsibility truly meant. For, those that are well versed in the Iraq War, we spent a lot of time in the Triangle of Death. We covered a lot of hotspots that were just a lot of heavy IED activity, EFP activity. Obviously, we experienced loss. We lost 4 guys. It just impacts you. We lost our first guy. It was the day after Christmas there. It was Christmas Day here. But that was my platoon. And that just changes you, forever. Coming back from deployment, I hit it pretty well for a while, but I exploded at first sergeant. He brought me into his office and he's like, "All right, Doc, what's going on?" I broke down at that point and proceeded to tell him what I'd been struggling with and the fact that, every single morning for about 2 months on my way to PT, I'd have to pull over on the side of the road and dry heave for a good 10 to 15 minutes because my anxiety was so high. But I would, and then I'd go to PT and do what I could at that point. I was coming to find out that I had 2 slip discs. I'd injured my shoulder, whatnot, along with a mild TBI, and the concussion from a large IED blast that we were involved in. My body was really starting to feel it. So there was just a lot that started to weigh heavily on me. And by the time we rolled into early 2007, and they started informing us that we were going to have to gear up and go back over, things got pretty ugly pretty fast. So, going on that next deployment was my biggest fear, is that I was so terrified that it would overwhelm my thoughts. And I was terrified that I would get into a situation where I had to take care of one of the guys and I wasn't going to be able to. So ultimately I made a decision that it was time. There was no way I could continue. And they granted me a medical retirement, in 2009. For several years after I got out, I did not do a good job of taking care of myself. I knew I wasn't where I should be. But like most veterans, how do you take our time in service, and especially combat veterans, and apply that to the civilian world? Because we feel like we're not supposed to talk about it. People aren't going to understand, so just leave it alone. Bury it to a certain degree. And that's an incredibly difficult thing to navigate. You try to have a lot of conversations with people, but you just feel like you don't belong. But I think once I'd finally made a commitment, it was a couple years after I'd gotten out that I was like, God, I got to start taking care of myself again. So I started running again. And I gave up soda. I always preface this by saying there are guys out there that experienced infinitely harder situations than what I did and what our unit did. But combat is combat, right? To see individuals that went through even more horrific situations and they're on top of things and they're living a good life and they're being productive and they're creative, positive change within their communities and in their families. That's extremely motivating. But at the end of the day, again, with what they train within DEF and whatnot, you got to focus on the self, right? And have self-discipline in everything you do on the daily. That was a big moment. It really started putting me on a path to finding the best version of myself again. Which, put me in a lot of great situations moving forward. So when this opportunity presented itself, you know, to get back in the fight with veterans, we're going to step back in the fight and we're going to do the work ourselves, right? We're not going to wait for other entities, whether that be government or you name it, right? It doesn't matter. We're not going to wait for anybody else to fix this. We're going to go back and take care of our brothers and sisters, because that's the bond that we built, within the combat world is, no man left behind. So, through a lot of great relationships, and kind of just some dumb luck, and things just kind of happened. It's hard to fight against that when this opportunity just kind of fell right in front of me. The more I get to know the veterans that we have within the organization, and the more I get to connect with veterans outside of the organization, it just further motivates me and inspires me to continue to find ways to help. Right. That's what I'm here for.